everyone, I am Rebecca from ChemKnits and welcome to night 2 of the 2020 Summer Mini Skein mini-series. Last night we took a look at a lot of PAAS Easter egg dyeing kits to evaluate if those dye tablets that are really fun to use to dye yarn have any different colors. And well, you can watch that video to see our conclusions. But tonight we're going to another Easter egg dyeing kit. But this one is a little unique. It's not something that I've seen before, and I think that maybe we have the chance of getting some really cool results. Now, when you want to dye anything with food coloring, you need to make sure that you have the right materials. For dyeing yarn with food coloring, you need it to be a protein-based fiber. Wool, alpaca, silk, those things work great. You also will need acid in some capacity, usually either vinegar or citric acid. You will need the artificial food coloring, which tonight will be in the form of, well, you'll see in a second. But then finally, you need heat. And when you combine those all together, you can create some really beautiful colorways. The other awesome thing about using food coloring to dye yarn is that it's food safe, it's kitchen safe. So I'm personally comfortable using my kitchen pots, pans, dishes to do this, and I love to bring the kids along to play around with food coloring and yarn. But now, let's go take a look at this interesting new kit that I found. When I saw this Easter egg speckling kit online, I had to get it to give a try. Yes, these are food coloring based markers, which I found in the past don't really work well to draw onto damp yarn, just because the tips sort of wick up the liquid from the yarn, and so then you just don't get good coverage. But what excites me here is this little bulb, and so I think that we're basically going to be spraying the pigment onto our yarn, and I think that that is really, really exciting. And I'm really intrigued. Again, these are food grade markers, and so they contain our happy artificial food coloring molecules that we need to dye yarn. But the other thing we have, and it's a minor ingredient, but it's citric acid. So I'm not sure if it's enough citric acid to dye the yarn, or if maybe we'll have to add some additional acid. But I thought it would be fun to give this a shot on some yarn that just pre-soaked in water, and then maybe we can also try it on some yarn that we pre-soak in vinegar to see if we see any difference. I pre-soaked 10 20-gram mini skeins of Wool to Dye For's Platinum DK in some plain tap water for a bit over an hour. I protected my work surface with some plastic wrap because after we speckle the yarn, I want to wrap it up and then steam set it in the microwave, and I do want to try to keep the colors separate from one another. But we'll see how well these markers work, how much pigment there is, and I'm not even sure if there's going to be enough pigment to do like one mini skein. We will see and adjust our plans as needed. But that's one reason why I wanted to play with this on mini skeins instead of a full skein. If the dye in these markers doesn't go very far, then I would have felt bad having a mostly white with almost no speckles 100-gram skein. But the 20-gram minis will have more balance even if there's not a lot of pigment in each of these markers. So the bulb, man, I don't really know. I wonder if this is something I could use with other things. I am intrigued and super curious. I laid out 5 skeins on my countertop. I did gently squeeze them to remove as much liquid as I could. And, well, I think that I take the cap off, insert the marker, okay. All right, and so you can see it sort of clicks in, and the little tip is at the very edge. I don't know. I'm assuming that's the way I'm supposed to do it at least. Okay, and now let's, whoa! That's cool. Oh my gosh, there are some speckles. I was like, huh, this might be a little more like spray, like a spray bottle, but I don't know if you guys can see. I'll bring you closer. There are what look like some teeny specks. Oh. So here's one of the patches. There's definitely like a bigger spot of color, but then we do have some teeny weeny speckles. So it might take a little bit of practice, but this is pretty cool. So higher up, we do get some more specks. I'm not sure about the optimum height for this. I'm not sure at all. Let's flip this over. There's definitely dye on the countertop, and so that will probably like affect it as I go on and do more, but this is interesting. I mean, it's not like it's a consistent application. I wonder what happens if I get really close. I mean, I do get some sharper specks looking when I'm close, but then there's also some more like spray. Huh. I am now curious. Because here's the thing, I could keep going, but my concern is if I keep going too much, that these little specks will definitely become more of that overall cover. So this is going to be a mostly white skein with some subtle patches, but I feel like the patches are pretty well spread out. So I think I might go on and do the other colors. I capped the pink marker and I did not, whoa, that is pigmented for yellow. I did not clean out the bulb before transitioning to this next color. I don't see as many like speckles per se, but yellow is hard like that. It's hard to, there's some, yellow is just hard. And the reason why yellow is so hard is that to get a yellow color, it needs to be, there's a limit to how pigmented it can be. As soon as you start making a yellow really saturated, it turns orange. Let's try really close and really hard. Yeah, I'm not seeing as many speckles on here. Maybe you would on an egg, but I'll bring you in closer. So there are some little speckles on the yellow, but you can see that they're just not as sharp as what we see somewhat on the pink. I'm glad that I didn't have to rinse out the bulb in between going from the pink to the yellow. There might have been a little bit of pink left on the yellow skein, but that's from where they are next to each other and some of the like color pushed over versus there being some of the pink left in the bulb. So I went ahead and did a similar level of coverage with the blue, green, and purple on the remaining 3 skeins. I'm honestly not sure if we'll see a huge difference when we go and add acid to do another round, but it's always good to know if the amount of acid in these markers is enough or if we need additional acid. So yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that not all this color washes out, and I'm also hoping there's enough pigment in these markers for me to do the next round. This was really fun. There is definitely a difference between the different colors. I'll bring you in closer in a moment. The blue gave more like splattered speckles. The purple was a little soft. The green, I didn't see as many speckles just in general. So, oh man, I am curious. The blue gave a beautiful splatter. I found, and I don't know, maybe it's more full, but if I didn't push the bulb all the way, I got really great splats and speckles. The purple, there's some really, really soft ones, but yeah, I mean, it just seemed softer overall. Then we have a few specks in with the green, but nothing like what we saw with the blue. Now I am going to go ahead and carefully wrap this up. I'm not wiping down the plastic wrap before I do this. I definitely probably could get away with this without using the plastic wrap, but I do want to at least attempt to keep things relatively separate. And plus, I want to treat these similarly and heat set them all at the same time. And ooh, maybe I see a little bit of breaking on the purple. I don't know. There's not a lot of liquid in the yarn, so I am going to go ahead and cover the bowl with a silicone microwave safe cover. This is a microwave safe dish, and I'm going to microwave this on high for a total of 4 minutes using 2-minute increments. While we are microwaving the yarn, I'm going to go ahead and add a 1/4 cup, which is about 4 tablespoons of white vinegar to the other yarn that we are pre-soaking. This doesn't need to sit in here very long anymore. It doesn't take very long for it to get acidic, especially if you stir things up, but it probably will sit for about 10 minutes before we get ready for the next round. I actually only ended up microwaving this for 3 minutes. One of the reasons why I do intervals is so that way I can check and make sure things are still hot, damp in between different rounds. Since there was less liquid in here, it didn't require as much time. I'm actually surprised that it only took 3 minutes to get hot, but it felt pretty hot after the first 2, so that's why I only added 1 more minute. So it's important to adjust the time as you think is necessary. But now I'm going to let this cool completely. I set up the vinegar soaked round in the same way, and one at a time decided to squirt on the colors. Now, it's possible that we might not see a lot of difference here. If there was enough citric acid in the markers, we might not end up seeing a lot of speckles on either one. If there's too much spread, it's possible that I will have it's possible that the markers are emptier, so maybe I'll see more speckles on the vinegar soaked ones. There's other variables in here. I could add more dye to this than I did on the previous one. All these variables mean that we may or may not be able to make a conclusion, but the one conclusion we will be able to make is there enough citric acid in the markers to dye the yarn at all? We just might not be able to make a conclusion about the amount of speckling that we see. Even without knowing the final results yet, I would say that it probably makes sense to pre-soak in vinegar if you have access to the vinegar, just to make sure that what you create is what you end up setting. But I don't know, I'm always curious about these things anyway. You might notice that I'm not wearing gloves, and I really got minimal staining on my fingers from this project. In general, I do like to wear gloves when I'm dyeing yarn with food coloring, just so that way I don't stain my hands. But sometimes I don't wear the gloves because I'm curious how messy it is. And I know that if you're someone who has a little bit of white yarn and just picked up a kit at Target or something, you might not have gloves on hand. And so while gloves are handy, they aren't completely necessary. After spraying, things feel similar. I did wipe the tip of this off once. There's a little bit of some liquid in here that I see, but overall, I think my experience is pretty similar to the first round. The most speckles that I see are absolutely in the blue. There's some subtle ones in the other 3 colors, but the blue, and I don't think it has to do with the blued food coloring molecules. I think it has to do with the fact that there might be more liquid in it. I felt more of a spray and a punch with the blue, and I had to work a lot harder with the purple to get pigmentation out. Yeah, from up here, without getting super, super close, you don't really see the speckles on any of them. Even zoomed in, I mean, you can see them on the blue, but it's a lot harder. I might see them in person, but I don't think the camera picks them up as well. For these other colors, the pink, you can kind of see a couple. Before I wrap this up, I do want to just briefly wipe up a tiny bit of overshoot. But otherwise, I am planning to wrap this up and treat this really, really similarly to the last one. I'm impressed that there was enough pigment for me to do light coverage on 200 grams of yarn. I'm gonna microwave this on high for 3 to 4 minutes, again using 2-minute increments. So I'm not sure if we can say successfully yet, but we definitely did dye 200 grams of yarn. And I certainly expect our vinegar friends to be well set. Maybe not the without, but we will see. And I mean, that's part of the fun of experimentation. And in the one with no vinegar, if everything washes out, I will be sad, but we can always over dye it. And so that's one of the reasons to play and experiment sometimes. It's a bit of a risk, but it doesn't mean you're gonna end up with nothing. I feel like there's still some pigment in these markers left. Now, I absolutely could have gone heavier. We could have tried layering these colors onto the same mini or separate ones. There's different ways that we could have, I guess, played with this more. But yeah, I guess I'm on a bit of a kick of just playing with some of these Easter egg dye tablets, and these aren't dye tablets. I'm on a bit of a kick of playing with these Easter egg kits and just seeing what it is we can create. So anyway, once everything is cool, then we can go and wash the yarn. Let's open it up. We've got the vinegar and the no vinegar. We're just gonna do our best to open it up and pop them back into their bowl. I do have some zip ties that I will put around them. Okay, I am seeing some speckles on our vinegar yarn so far, which is good. Especially here on the blue with the vinegar. Okay, and I believe, and I'll let you guys know if I notice anything differently, I believe that this one is the no vinegar. I do see some speckles here. Now, we're gonna need to wait and compare to see if maybe the speckles are sharper where I had acid than when I didn't. That would be consistent with things we know about dyeing yarn with food coloring. But here in the pink, I'm also seeing some speckling, which is exciting. Now, red food coloring binds faster than blue. I have added some of my favorite reusable nylon zip ties onto the yarn. I was able to write vinegar on one. This helps me keep track of them and helps me keep things from getting tangled while I'm washing, and it's really, really awesome. If you would like to learn more about some of my favorite tools and equipment, I do have a lot of affiliate links in the video description. And full disclosure, if you make a purchase through one of those links, which are clearly marked, I do earn a commission. I do my best to make sure that the links are as up to date as possible, but occasionally one might be broken, or the manufacturer, Amazon, might for some reason put another item, say for example, a non-reusable nylon zip tie in the same link. So if you notice that a link doesn't go to what I think it went to, please, please, please let me know, and I will try to update the links going forwards. But especially with the zip ties, please make sure that the listing says that they're reusable, because this wasn't me linking to the wrong thing. This was literally the listing getting changed on me. And this has happened at least twice that I'm aware of so far. First, let's wash the yarn that had no vinegar pre-soaked. So again, our markers contain citric acid. And so if it was enough acid, then the color should strike. And the chance here is pretty good, because if this were something that, say, we were gonna dissolve in water and then try to dye the yarn in that, then that acid would get diluted. But since we were just sort of spraying this color onto the yarn, the amount of acid that was present is still localized where those speckles are. So that gives us a chance of success. And you know, right now I'm not seeing any bleeding, which is a good sign. There have definitely been videos with, say, for example, tie-dye markers where we got some bleeding and I was so excited, and then the color all came out in the wash, and that was super sad, but it happens. So I just added some clear dish soap so that way we can see. And I think the odds are in our favor. I am seeing speckles and I'm not seeing color come out. That is awesome. Yeah, this is super encouraging. Now, we'll wait once the yarn is dry to see if there's any difference to having the vinegar or not. But I'm going to put this through my automated spin dryer and we'll hang this up to dry. I think some of the speckles might be sharper on the yarn that we dyed with the vinegar. But, you know, it's hard to say because there was a lot, the technique was not necessarily easy. And I could see this being really frustrating to do with eggs. Even though we're not doing the conclusions yet, I can already say that I don't necessarily recommend buying this product unless it is on serious clearance. Just because I paid $5 for each of these kits, which is a lot. For $15, the amount of pigmentation that I got isn't that much. And for $15, I could almost get a full Wilton Colorite food coloring system, which is jam-packed with pigmentation, so I could dye so much more yarn, especially if I wanted something as pastel as this. Like one drop of that food coloring would be more pigmented than what I got on each of these. But I do think that this yarn is pastel and fun, so it really is up to you whether or not it is worth it. I do think that I need to consider trying some squirt pens and things again. In the past, I mean, I love, for example, the Wilton Colorite food coloring sprays, and I've played around with a little bit of squirt bottles. So while those are really fun to use, in general, I didn't find that I got so many speckles. But here, we got something kind of fine. So maybe I should give it another shot, especially if we're okay with patches of color surrounded by some speckles. Maybe it's worth playing around with. Please let me know what you think down in the comments, and off to the spin dryer I go. Let's take a look at the yarn that we dyed with this speckle kit. This is feeling timely as I'm filming this in the beginning of June, because lately I've been getting a lot of questions about using different spray materials to add speckles to yarn. And well, this does work. Adding vinegar to the pre-soak makes a difference very subtly, but also the way you spray does make a difference. We see speckles in both of these blues, but there are some tiny and sharper speckles when we had the vinegar versus when we didn't, especially with this blue. It's worth pointing out that with no vinegar, we still see some tiny sharp speckles with our pink. This kit worked pretty well. We dyed 200 grams of yarn in these two cute fade sets using just one of these speckle kits. And I believe we still have more pigment in these little markers. The downside to this is that I don't think that we could refill these markers with like our own custom colors to take advantage of this application method. In general, I think that this works because as you spray, the amount of liquid that is coming out of the little bulb is really little. And since it spreads it out a lot, that enables us to get these little speckles. In the past, when I've tried spraying with different spray bottles, you can do this to get a really beautiful thin layer of coverage, but in general, it doesn't give a ton of tiny little speckles. It gives more just sort of like a light layer of color over an area. But I'm willing to try that again, and I'm willing to try and to explore that more. But I think that in general with other spray bottles, I like using them on blanks because then you can take advantage to the resist of the knit blank to help you get speckles in your final product. The yellow absolutely reads orange here to me, probably because it's fairly pigmented, but yeah, I mean, all of it is really beautiful. And I have more of these kits. I'm going to play with them more in the future. But The list price of $5 is high. And so if you find it for 75% off, sure, maybe. But overall, some of the speckles we got are pretty sharp, but you also get all of the splotches of color in here. It's not just giving you that light layer of tiny speckles. So it could be more worthwhile to, for example, try to make your own sugar sprinkles to achieve some sharp speckles with food coloring. And that is something that I really, really want to try. Hopefully I will do that sooner rather than later as a way to get your own custom food coloring speckles on yarn. If you enjoyed this experiment and demonstration that you don't need additional acid to dye yarn with this Easter egg speckling kit, but maybe it's worth adding extra acid, please subscribe to the ChemKnits Tutorials YouTube channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a new video. I love exploring as many different kinds of food coloring as I can find, and yeah, we have a lot of fun and learn a lot along the way. Now, as I said, not everything I try is the most cost-effective way to get yourself set up to dye yarn, but that doesn't mean it's not fun. And really, this whole hobby, this whole art is about fun and color and playing with that color. So I really hope you enjoyed this video. There are a lot of different unusual Easter egg dyeing kits out there, and I have some other things that might be more atypical and interesting application methods that I hope to try out at later times. But I do have a whole playlist of Easter egg dyeing techniques, so if you want to go see the different kits I've tried in the past, go and check that out. If you love the yarn that I dye and want to support the channel at the same time, you should go and check out the ChemKnits Creations Etsy shop. This shop is filled with hand-dyed yarn that I have featured in my videos, and so you can buy some beautifully dyed yarn and support the channel at the same time. And it makes space so that way I can bring in more bare yarn to dye more and create more videos. So you can find a link to the Etsy shop in the video description and the top right-hand corner of your screen. Stay tuned, because over the next 3 nights we have 3 new videos beyond the regularly scheduled Dye Pot Weekly series. There are 2 more nights of the official Summer Mini Skein mini-series, and then we have a vlog where you can come behind the scenes, watch me assemble the sets and make some fun extras, and I think it's going to be a fun one. I don't do a lot of vlogs like that, and so it's really fun to share my thoughts and excitement as I'm putting these things together when I can't otherwise share spoilers, because I want it to be an experience to unwrap them. So anyway, there is a playlist for the Summer Mini Skein mini-series, and so you can find all the videos in there as they are published. Thank you so much for watching, everyone.